Aston Villa have signed Jhon Durán from Chicago Fire for a fee reported to be around £15 million. The 19-year-old Colombian forward has spent one season in Major League Soccer, scoring 9 goals. To find out more about him, I'm joined by South American football journalist Simon Edwards, who is based in Colombia. Simon, it's great to have you on. Firstly, who is Jhon Durán?
He's a very, very interesting player. He made his professional debut at 15, came off the bench on the 91st minute and scored in the 92nd minute. So a great start. But basically, he's a very complete, very strong, very intelligent striker who's able to hold the ball up and also run in behind. So really, really highly rated here in Colombia. Basically, he exploded onto the scene when he was about 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Had a bit of a growth spurt at around that age, and he'd been playing as a winger, but had become a 9 just as his body was growing. He's now, I think, 6'2". He's got a good physical build, and that kind of all develops at around the age of 15. So at 15, he scored 30 goals at the youth regional leagues, and was kind of top goal scorer. Finishing ahead of Thomas Angel, the son of Juan Pablo Angel.
Okay.
Yeah, so they were two big prospects, but I think Durán is better. Durán is, as I say, when I saw him playing for Envigado, which is one of the top academies here in Colombia, they have a professional team, but it's the team that produced Freddy Guarin, James Rodriguez, Juan Fernando Quintero. Dozens of their players are, Yasa Esprilla, who's now at Watford. A lot of those players came through Envigado, and he was making his debut with as a 15-year-old, and he looked incredibly complete, holding the ball up. It's a young Dion Dublin. It was unbelievable. But yeah, and now he's added that goals and that killer instinct to his game. But even at 15, he looked like a veteran striker with his hold-up play, his movement, battling off defenders. It was really, really impressive. And he established himself as a starting number 9 very quickly at Envigado. Played regularly every game and moved on to Chicago at a very young age, and has brought things on from there. But very, very interesting player.
And how has he done at Chicago Fire in the MLS?
So he's, as I say, my feeling with him at Envigado was always he does everything, but he needs to add goals to his game. And look, when you're 15, 16, if you're playing incredibly well, holding the ball up, bringing everyone into play, that's great. And I think with Chicago, he's been doing well. He scored goals in kind of spurts. Like he's had a little bit of run of form, and I think gradually as he's adapted to the league, his output's been better, and they've become like 2 goals here and a couple of goals in a run of games here. Look, he's still 19, but I think with all of his physical advantage he has, with the speed, with the power, with the strength, combined with his game intelligence, his pressing ability, his collective play, often Colombian players have very raw technical ability, some real physical potential, but from such a young age, he was already there on all of the complicated stuff. Okay. I think now it's just building up the confidence, get him into a good run of form, getting him comfortable, and then everything else will come from it. But straight away, you'll have someone who can immediately come in and press and hold up the ball and link the play. And if you can get him on a goal-scoring run of form, then he finishes really well. And I think there's a really, really good player there.
Okay, that's very exciting to hear. Do you know how much interest there was in him from clubs in Europe? And, what do you think of the fee Aston Villa have paid for him?
Yeah, I think it's obviously it's a little bit of new territory for a player coming out of MLS. I don't think there's really an established price for kind of a top MLS talent so far. So I think that's probably why. So it kind of feels both cheap and expensive,
Right.
Because you're taking a striker who hasn't scored a huge number of goals in MLS, has done well and has had shown real quality, but it's also a top 19-year-old South American U20 national team striker, played for the Colombian first team as well. So it's really hard one to value. There was obviously links with every club in England, pretty much, Man United, Liverpool, Chelsea. And I know personally Manchester United asked me about him directly, so I know there's some substance at least to them keep an eye on him. Wow. So with all of that context, I think it feels about fair. It's a little bit unknown taking a player straight out of MLS going to the Premier League. Obviously, Almiron did it and eventually came good, but he had a lot more experience behind him. So I think for the quality of playing you're getting, it feels like a very cheap price. although there isn't a real kind of history of players making that move to kind of set the value. So I think it was a little bit unknown, but it feels about right.
Okay. And, are you considering that interest that there was from Manchester United, and I think also maybe Chelsea, and a few others as well. Are you surprised that it was Aston Villa he went to? It was certainly surprising today to see his picture come up on the Villa Twitter feed, and suddenly we had a new signing. So yeah, were you surprised at all that it was Aston Villa he ended up at?
A little bit, but I suppose I'm pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
I didn't, it's better for him to go into a club, and look, that's still a huge step up in quality.
Mhm.
But he's not going to Manchester City or Chelsea, where it's very difficult to see where he'd get minutes. I think he's definitely good enough to play for those level clubs in the future.
Mhm.
The raw materials are there, and for a 19-year-old to have such a complete set of skills and be such a complete forward, I think that means that he'll, even if he doesn't score every game, he'll be bringing something to the team from day one.
Mhm.
Because the work rate's there, the intelligence is there, the hold-up play is there, the pressing's there. He'll be an effective player straight away. And
Mhm.
as I say, if you can get him scoring goals, then he's going to fly. But he's not going to be one of these very, very raw youngsters you throw in, and he looks a bit lost, or he's not really doing his job, but you're just hoping he has one of those moments. He's very, very mature and very, very intelligent. He's going to be playing at the end of this month in the South American Championships for Colombia under 20 level. So he'll be playing Brazil and Argentina in that competition. So he won't be necessarily in England for another month or so, because that tournament begins on the 19th. But if Aston Villa fans want to get an idea of what's to come, then he's going to be an important star player for Colombia in that tournament. And he's already made his full national team debut and impressed. So, there's definitely a high ceiling for this one.
Okay. Yeah, well, that was exactly what I was going to ask. What his kind of ceiling is. I mean, you look at Villa and you see that we have Ollie Watkins up front, Danny Ings, and Leon Bailey as our sort of starting forwards. Really, what do you think? What sort of dynamic can he offer that maybe those players don't? Would you be aware of?
Yeah, look, I say he's much more of a physical presence
Okay.
as a nine. He has played as a winger before, but it's not his position.
Mhm.
He's a target man. He's a target man who has the pace to run in behind. If I was to compare him, maybe a Lukaku kind of player.
Okay.
He's not solely kind of getting the ball to feet. It's about movement. It's about intelligence. But it's that kind of physical profile, which I think Aston Villa don't necessarily have at the moment. So it gives another tool in the arsenal.
Absolutely, that's something we've been talking about on the podcast. Actually, that Villa often send the ball forward, and we're not very good at holding it up in the final third. So that dynamic is definitely very welcome, I think. And as a final question, I know it's very difficult to crystal ball it and try and predict how somebody's going to do, but do you think he has what it takes to potentially be a real success story in the Premier League?
Yeah, I definitely do. As I say, he's gone from Envigado. He was signed by Chicago at like 16 years old, 17 years old. And to
Mhm.
go from Envigado up to Chicago, which obviously freezing cold in the winter, difficult conditions, a very physical league. MLS obviously isn't at the quality level of the Premier League, but it's a very physical league.
Mhm.
Lots of travel, difficult lifestyle in some ways for the players. So that will give him this kind of experience and adaptation. He's a sponge. He's a very receptive player who will listen to instructions. He has a very good natural understanding of tactical responsibilities. He's collective. For me, seeing him come through at 15, 16, he was kind of too collective. He was kind of too selfless in a way. But he's obviously adding goals to his game. But I think those are all real important qualities to go into the Premier League. You can't just be a goal scorer in the Premier League. You have to bring more to your game, particularly if he's going to be the focal point number 9. So I think just the complete package that he brings means that he'll be a really useful tool. And then, if he explodes and get those goals, then, we're talking a top player. But I think it's a really, really smart signing for Aston Villa. He's a player who was rightfully at the top of the wanted list. Everyone wants a goal scoring number 9, and to get one who's 19 and so quick and so complete, I think it's a really interesting signing.
Well, he's following in the footsteps of a much-loved Colombian striker, the man you mentioned earlier, Juan Pablo Angel. So that's very exciting to hear all that. And thank you very much, Simon, for your very informative take on Durán. But also, just before we go, for those who don't know, where can we find you online and your general output?
Yeah, so on Twitter at Simon Edwards SAF. I'm also working as an agent here in Colombia as well. So nothing involved in Durán. That was all. That was all. There was no personal interest involved in bigging up Durán. I'm just a fan, but working hard over here to try and create some new opportunities for Colombian players. So let's see what I can put together in the next few weeks. Quite a few interesting moves on the horizon. So we'll have to wait and see.